Teal, welcome to the Democratizing SEO podcast. How are you doing today?
Thanks, I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Yes, very well, thanks. Very, very well. I thought of an episode which I thought would be very interesting. I'm titling this Climbing That Mountain. And I essentially want to focus it on the dynamics between SEO and the leader, the CEO of an SME business. And I thought you'd be a very
hmm
interesting person to speak with around this. Especially with your experience within SEO and especially your experience within working client side. But before we
hmm
get into the main topic, as I like to do with all my SEO guests, I like to ask them how they got started within the SEO industry. So, with that said, how did you become an SEO professional?
Yeah, I would say it started with content. Actually, it started on the content side. I was studying at university, and in parallel, I was working as a scientific researcher at university, and I was working as a freelance journalist for a medium-sized uh, print newspaper here in Germany. So I started working in producing content on the journalist side. And afterwards, I made a switch actually working for the German embassy in communications in Denmark. And I got a little bit into political communication, but what I also realized was that this world is really slow and we might say a little too slow for my temper. So once the opportunity presented itself to make a change into the private sector, I took it and I started to work as a marketing manager for a company that was working in the betting industry as an affiliate. And back in the days, I don't know how it is today. SEO was pretty much the only digital channel these companies could have because it was very regulated. You couldn't
Yeah.
really do paid marketing and stuff like that. So even though my title was marketing manager, I would say 90% of my time went into SEO. And
Mm.
that's what really got me started because what I really loved is to discover also the distribution side of content. And that's what
Mm.
SEO is about in an organic way, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Your background. I would have thought someone with your background would probably get into either technical or a data focused role, specifically within SEO. Why content instead of either one of those two?
Well, it's really true because I'm very also passionate about the technical aspect, and I like a lot stuff like regex and XPath and scraping, these kind of things. I enjoy thoroughly. But originally, I hold master's degree in comparative literature, so I had not much to
Ah,
do with business. Later on at university, I took finance classes and stuff like that, but originally I really come from a side of literature. That's also what I was researching at university.
mm,
But once I made the switch and this whole world of distribution opened to me, I became very passionate about these techniques to make content accessible and readable, and
mm,
that's where I went more into the technical aspect as well. But I started with really on page um, written content SEO.
hmm. Okay. Okay. Now, I saw on your LinkedIn that you have a vast experience working with leadership at businesses, and some people would say the owner of an SME doesn't necessarily care or focus so much on SEO. They essentially utilize it, right, to grow their business. So what they're interested in is business growth, which is fair enough. What should a CEO know about SEO before they decide to invest in it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I would say there's no straightforward answer. But the first thing that really comes to mind is I think in the old days, when I started my SEO journey, there was a very clear path to success, especially in the industries that I was working with, and it had a lot to do with link building, for example. And you could
Mm-hmm.
have a direct correlation between buying links or earning links in an organic way,
Mm-hmm.
and your ranking results. These correlations are very, very blurry today. I don't think
Yeah.
there's any SEO in the world who, with authority, can say why exactly the rankings are the way they are. We can have hypotheses and we can test them, but we don't have like this clear path to success anymore.
Mm.
So I think when for an SME who might have restrained resources, um, you must be very transparent around what SEO can deliver, which is a long-term growth and also profit driver, because it's still a comparable cheap channel once it's established. But there's
Mm.
also a lot of try and error on the way, and it's not something that will happen on the overnight. So you need to have, like, when you really start going to invest into it, you need to be fine with having like an investment horizon of maybe 6 months before you even see some significant results. Sometimes it takes more, sometimes it takes a little less. That is really not something that can be planned to, an exact period of
Mm.
time.
Mm.
Mm. So I would say you have to you have to make clear that for many businesses, SEO is a great business case because of the long-term gains, but you also have to be very transparent about that this might take time and there might be, some try and error. Um, yeah.
Are there things that can speed up that process? So you say it might take that long, or it might be quicker, or around the 6 months mark. What are the things that, let's say, a head of SEO or the CEO should be aware of and consider to have that time frame more along the lines of 6 months rather than nine,
Mm-hmm.
10 or so?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you have some kind of commodity product that is, you have a wide range of similar commodities in your inventory, I think really that coming up with some kind of template that once once you have produced it and you fill it with content, and then you have a variation over many URLs, but basically it's based on the same content, really can be a good strategy to get going fast, because not all of these pages will rank super well. But it's
Mm,
it's 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 a volume case, right? If the volume of your
yeah,
commodity is enough to justify many URLs or pages that are templified, you really have a great business case in SEO. I think if you have like a more diversified business in terms of service, and it's not really a commodity with like a similar inventory, well, that can be a more challenging environment, I would say. From a personal experience, I I would produce pages right away that are going or aiming for, like, the big search keywords. But I would also be realistic about that these probably will not be ranking so well, but they should already be there, I think. But then driving the traffic, I would go for the more low hanging and long tail keyword um,
right.
combinations that are really addressing some specific issue that your product or your service can solve, and where there is substantially less search volume, but often there is also less competition then.
Yeah.
And that's what I would be aiming for.
Mm. Okay, so let's say I'm a CEO, right? I have my CEO hat on. I have a vision. I have a team. I've communicated the vision to the team. It's been 6 months, and not only is SEO not performing, it seems as though it's disrupting my vision. right? This is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking as a CEO. Is this line of thinking correct, or is it completely wrong?
Well, I mean, I do think with some proper SEO, after 6 months, you should be seeing some kind of results that are giving you a direction where you can see, okay, this is going well, or this is not working for me. So I would understand a CEO that after 6 months of non-existing success either would believe they hired the wrong people, or they're working together with the wrong agency, which also can be a good way to test the waters, right? Because
Hmm.
you are outsourcing the financial risk a little bit,
Yeah.
by hiring an agency. Um, uh, well, but yeah, the thing is, if after 6 months there is really no results that are going into a direction, as a CEO, I would also reconsider my structure, my company structure around SEO. Maybe
Mm.
that's just wrong. Or, I mean, SEO is also not the only channel. So maybe there are other channels that are actually more um, justifiable in terms of
Mm.
return on invest. Sometimes that happens.
So let's say SEO is performing, but not to my expectations. Like I want to move mountains, as a number of CEOs like to say. I want to move mountains, right? I've got this bold vision, but SEO is moving a bit too slowly for my liking, right? And I also
Mm-hmm.
have PPC, which is performing to my expectations, and
Yes.
I am now considering, is SEO worth it?
Well, I think that's like the eternal case, right? That's also even not just because I have been working for big companies as well, and it's not even specific to an SME. An SME or a
Mm.
smaller company is more restrained on financial resources, so they have to be even more uh, focused on what's working right now. Um, and very often, the truth is that PPC might be working very well in the beginning for companies. What I would say is, if you see that SEO starts to work, but it's not living up to your expectation yet, if you're doing a great job in your other channels, maybe you're actually able to finance your SEO endeavors, because I do believe that SEO is one, if not the greatest digital channel once it actually starts working, because the marginal cost for every customer acquired is just much lower than in other channels. And if that is
Hmm.
kind of a vision that you want to achieve, then I would say, okay, on the short term, maybe other channels should be, making the money. But if you
Mm.
see it working just a little bit, you should probably keep going.
So you mentioned once it reaches the point where I have more confidence in it, right?
Hmm.
Where is that point? Because the way my thinking around this is, if it's taken 6 months, it's going okay, but moving very slowly. And
Hmm.
I'm starting to lose confidence in the channel. My thinking will be just to focus on PPC of the channels that are performing, because
Hmm.
as with every company, every business, we have targets to hit, right? And if SEO
Hmm.
isn't quite hitting that target, the question is why and when will it hit that target?
Yeah, I see you. I mean, that is a really valid question, and I think there is not, one answer to that, and the reason for that being is that companies are very unique, each one of
Mm,
them, in also in terms of, are they getting funding? If they are getting funding and have a lot of cash to burn through in the beginning of their business cycle to actually uh, become big,
mhm,
well then I would say, okay, it's not working as well, and maybe we need to we need to make a reallocation of financial resources and put a little bit more into PPC or whatever is working at this point of time.
Yeah.
But I would also still, invest some money into something that in the long run actually really can be a significant contributor to revenues. And well, one way to at least have an idea is to actually look into the commercial search volume that is in your market. And if you see that it's quite big, you can kind of do a very, very rough estimate of, okay, if I get like 5%
Right.
of this commercial market in terms of SEO with a expected conversion rate of X%, I can expect this kind of revenue coming down the line. And then you can do the math, calculating whether it's worth it or not. That is a very rough way of doing it, but I do think it gives you a good idea of whether it's worth or not.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I've noticed as an SEO, so I've worked both client side, agency side. I see that having a strategy is definitely the approach for one to have, right? For one to take. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times, the implementation is where a number of issues arise. And that's where the unknown issues are, in my opinion. Do you find that you have the same um, experience?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think part of this SEO journey is to expect the unexpected, and often it's something dug down in the tech stack, in the development resources, in
Mm,
the cultural understanding of SEO in a company, meaning that uh, today's SEO is not like a sole endeavor anymore. Yeah, you need the help of the
exactly.
developers. You
Yeah.
need the help of managers. You need the help of the PPC guys. Um, so if there is no SEO culture embedded in a company, it's going to be very tough. And these are kind of the things that you really start discovering once you discover them, and you didn't even know they would be there before you actually started doing it.
hmm Yeah, you mentioned an interesting phrase there, SEO culture. It's so important within businesses. I find that a number of brands, they might have invested in SEO, but when it comes to managing SEO, the approach that they have is still very much looking at SEO as a silo. So they don't necessarily consider how SEO impacts other departments, their department, contents department, and more importantly, likewise. I say likewise because a lot of SEO issues inadvertently are caused by non-SEOs.
Mm-hmm.
Non-SEOs not knowing what they're doing or how what they're doing impacts the website, right? Impacts the SEO performance. And it's not
Yeah.
until an issue arises that the SEO finds out, and by then it's way too late. Now, when you consider all the different facets that impact a website, right? Developers, front end, back end, middleware, content, PR, um, even PPC. All of these departments impact SEO, right? There is just way too much going on to not focus on the culture of SEO within a business. What's your take on the value or importance of having spreading the awareness of SEO within a business?
Well, first of all, I couldn't agree more with you, and I think what I've been, what I've personally experienced with from the past is, very often um, a company starts thinking about SEO after the fact they did something that is really, really hurting SEO.
Yeah.
So I think the role of a modern SEO in a modern company is really to be involved before these kind of things, unintentional things, are happening. In terms of and there is, just as you say, knowledge spreading is really, really vital in a company, for any SEO. And I think you should definitely have, like, bi-weekly meetings where all the stakeholders are sitting, or representatives of departments. Like there can be one SEO representative, there can be one tech representative, and then you have PR. You might even have paid on the table, and you
Mm-hmm.
should be discussing stuff. So if you even have like OKRs or something like that, like, these kind of concepts,
Mm-hmm.
you are, in a best case scenario, you are talking the same business language anyways. You are just
Yeah.
having different techniques how to get there. Of course, this is a best case scenario, but in theory, you should be speaking the same business language. So it shouldn't be too hard to actually meet um, across teams and discuss these OKRs, and in the case of SEO, to address potential SEO issues that should
Mm-hmm.
be considered while trying to reach the specific objective.
Mm. Why do you think SEO is so considered as the foreign channel within digital marketing? I mean, it's not the youngest channel. Social is younger than SEO, but there's something about SEO that makes people not embrace it as they should do. And that is exactly the opposite of what they should be doing. Why do you think SEO isn't as welcomed yet as it should be?
Well, I think there's mainly two reasons for it. Number one being that it's, to people that don't know, kind of a black magic thing. It's at least a black box. You're putting something in and you are never certain about the outcome. Um, I think the role of a good SEO is putting things into this box, not being 100% sure of the outcome, but being able to make reasonable forecasts. But people that are not in a process and not involved in SEO, they feel inherently uncomfortable with the fact that you're putting something out there and you have not a complete overview of what's the most likely outcome going to be. Um, that's different from, for example, PPC, because in PPC you put money in, you get money out, and you can measure it very, very quickly.
Yeah.
That's the second factor in SEO. You might change a multitude of things, and eventually you're gonna get success. But now, if
Mm.
someone is asking you, okay, we have been doing 10 initiatives, what is actually the reason for this success that we are seeing now? You cannot truly tell, because it's a dynamic environment where also, maybe the competition got worse. So you're just
Yeah.
ranked better automatically. Maybe it's the combination of all these things. Maybe it was one certain thing. Um, so you cannot give like a very, very precise answer. Of course, top managers, they tend also not to like that. And then the last point is that SEO, in the old days, it was fairly defined, I would say. As I said, like when I started, link building was just a big part, and you could become really good at link building by the means of outreach, or by being really effective how you buy them, etc., etc.
Mm.
So it was fairly defined. But what you just said 5 minutes before, that's not SEO anymore. You have to, talk to the tech people. You have to talk with PR, with your communication in a broader sense. So it's a multitude of things. It has even to do with conversion rate optimization,
Yeah.
and all these things. So it's fairly complex, I would say. And
Mm.
it's complex and dynamic. So you also have to continuously educate yourself about what's going on.
Mm.
And this unpredictability, or let's say not unpredictable, but limited predictability, together with the relative complexness, I think makes it sometimes very hard to communicate SEO. And that's why
Mm.
people from outside are looking at it as kind of this, black magic thing.
I sometimes think the way we've um, provided information about SEO hasn't been updated. So there was a time when SEO was synonymous with link building, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it was true at the time. It was true. Now it's not only in that aspect of SEO. You have to consider it's very comprehensive now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I wonder sometimes whether the way we think of data when it comes to SEO is hindering people's business leadership's ability to um, project and see the compounding effect of what they're doing. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I think of SEO, let's say a head of SEO, and I think of a CEO, the way they think should be very much focused on what they're doing compounding into the future, right? They shouldn't necessarily be in the present. And it makes me wonder, because CEOs tends to live in the future, whether it's 6 months, 12, a year, whatever, right? Why do they not see the vision of where SEO is going to go, even if it's just that tiny bit of metric, right? And they see that that metric is improving. Why do you think they're not able to project and see that long term vision? Some, I should say.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think part of it, there might be, personal reasons from case to case for every CEO. There are different human beings, but
Mm,
I think broadly speaking, in my opinion, many SEOs are not very good in communicating SEO. If you don't tie SEO to some kind of business metric and are saying, okay, we are doing this because actually between 6 to 12 months, we have a strong idea of this will contribute by X% into revenues.
mhm.
Um, if you instead, talk about, okay, last week we have been building 2 more links. I mean, why should a CEO care about that, right? So I think
Yeah.
you have to be able to communicate the business value of SEO in a very concise way. Historically, and also if you go, on the main SEO blogs, um, this topic is a little bit underserved. It's often, very technical topics, etc., etc. But how they actually, or like these articles, typical articles, how to use XPath to scrape X amount of data.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, that's fine, but that does not necessarily translate into business gain, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I do believe we in the community, we are fairly like detail orientated. Whereas if you're working in a company where you're reporting to the top management, you need to go out of this, very, very detailed vision and communicate how what you're doing is contributing in a meaningful way into business. And I
Mm.
think if you're good at that, SEO will automatically become also more important in a company.
Totally, totally. Now, climbing that mountain, or I should say, winning in SEO, can be like climbing a mountain, especially with business leadership. As someone who's done so for some time, what is it like to go on that journey with business leadership?
Yeah, I think when I started, and well, basically from the very start, from my professional career, I have kind of always reported to senior leadership, if not top leadership. Um, I think when I started, it was quite straightforward because you were asking for a budget that you could put into different kind of things. One of
Mm,
these things being, as you said, also it really worked at this point, links, and you would get a result fairly quickly. So I think the progress was fairly linear. Actually, it was more plannable than today. Today, when you're saying climbing the mountain, the other side of the story is also that you can fall down the mountain fairly easily, or partly fall down the mountain fairly easily these days. My impression is, and also when I talk to my friends, that Google is much, much more volatile and it's much more
Yeah.
complex. So you might not be able to, when you get a hit, be able to address the issue immediately, because it can be a multitude. So I think I like it more today because it's more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely need to be more, the philosophy of Stoicism. So you need to believe in what you're doing, and you need to be looking at things over a longer period of time to see if the trend is positive or negative. But if you're freaking out because of, weekly volatility or daily volatility, SEO is really not the right channel for you anymore.
No, I personally think a number of SEOs, especially those who are high up within the business, so let's say head of SEO level, right? Some can tends to focus too much on the fluctuations within search, and
Yeah.
you have to be aware of it, right? Because the SEO industry, the fluctuations is important and it affects every website pretty much. But I think the business needs, as in the business that one is in, is also an important aspect to focus on, as well as the industry
Mm-hmm.
that they are in. What is the balance for you between those three things? The SEO industry news, let's say the business news, and also the news of the industry of the business.
Yeah. So um, I agree once again with you when you're saying that some SEOs, in my opinion, are focusing too much on the volatility fluctuations, as you called it. And I think often even the methodology to measure these fluctuations are not the right one, because a lot of SEOs are freaking out once they go on a SEO roundtable and they read like this forum, or there is like some kind of update, unconfirmed, confirmed, whatever update, and they see their rankings dropping. What I really would suggest to any SEO, and that's more technical now, you should measure your historical volatility very closely, and you should be able to measure your standard deviation from this normal um, normal volatility as well. And first, when you see that the volatility that you're seeing is a couple of standard deviations above or below whatever what's just normal, or let's say noise that you cannot explain, you really shouldn't freak out too much. You should do your thing, because in the best case, if you're a good SEO, you have a valid strategy that you're working with, and it's just daily noise. As such, I do follow the SEO news, but I do follow SEO news only that is evergreen.
Mm,
I don't know, formulas to make something more easy. Um, Best practices in terms of outreach,
mm,
um, the intricacies of client rendered websites, these kind of things I do follow, but these are evergreens topic.
yeah.
I don't follow any Twitter. I don't follow any SEOs roundtable. For me, 80% of this stuff is noise anyways, and it just makes you uncomfortable, or it hypes you up, because it can also go the other way. And
Yeah.
there's some kind of unconfirmed update, and suddenly you're seeing your rankings going up and your traffic is exploding. Is it really because you're so much better than the rest, or is it just volatility? So I think you need to be humble, and don't get too confused when it goes down, but also don't get overconfident when it goes up, and
Mm,
really measure the standard deviations of your volatility, in order to say, okay, for me right now, in my certain situation, not because it's the chatter in the industry, on my website right now, we are a couple of standard deviations away from weekly volatility or daily volatility, whatever you want to measure. And now I should actually start looking into the data and see why that might be. But yeah, I think you should keep calm.
That is a brilliant tip right there, because I think people move by the industry, and what you just mentioned right there, having your own internal metrics in place that will be the ones that lead what you do, is a way to remove a lot of the noise. That is, yeah, that's brilliant. That's perfect.
Thank you.
The head of SEO is an interesting position, because they journey into the future, let's say, with the CEO, business leadership. At the same time, they also have to be in the present and help their direct reports and or agencies, support agencies who are supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're constantly moving from being in the future to being in the present, right? What is the personal cost of being in that position? Is it very draining, or is it just something after a while you get used to?
You mean as the head of SEO?
Yeah.
Well, that's a general question, but I can only answer it personally. I happen to like that because it's for me personally, um, an agile work environment is quite important. Otherwise, it's just not that fun. So I don't mind all the buzz, the daily buzz versus, okay, let's look ahead and having like these two heads on constantly. But again, I do think you just have to take it with a grain of stoicism and a grain of salt, and just don't freak out if the current status is going up or down, because that's just how the
Hmm.
business is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the bus is fun as well, so I wouldn't want to miss it. Um, as the head of SEO, what I will say is that I think the role of a good SEO is to take the bus a little bit out, meaning that you explain that what is happening currently might just be a normal fluctuation, and shouldn't be cared too much about. So it doesn't mean that we need to reconsider all of the strategy, or we have to change all of our tactics overnight, because once you go down the road in SEO and you're changing your approach every day, well, if you're lucky, you still get somewhere. But
Mm.
in most cases I have seen, you don't really go nowhere, because you're just not following one structured path.
Yeah. SEO as an industry, where 23 or so years old, depending on when one considers SEO started, early 2000s or 99. Um, but businesses, of course, have their own individual age of SEO, right? Some businesses have
Mm-hmm.
been carrying out SEO, as in they're actively invested and actively taking charge of their SEO. Some
Mm-hmm.
are 7+ years, some are 5, some are 2, some are just beginning. Let's say the lifespan from year one, no, sorry, year zero to year 5. If I were to ask you, what is the most difficult year for a business's SEO, which would you say is the most difficult, and which is the best year? Is it from between year 0 and year 5?
In terms of maturity, you mean, right?
Yeah.
I cannot put a certain year on it, but what I have learned is that sooner or later, every digital company kind of relaunches their website sooner or later. And I think that's one of the challenging things once you have accumulated a sufficient amount of legacy tech, and now you are finally making the decision to not accepting the daily pain anymore, but to actually redo it and to also come up with something better. I would say that's one of the challenging, difficult points, because you, especially if you already have a large amount of traffic or a significant amount of traffic, you can mess up a lot of stuff in this process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say it's fairly easy to start SEO, because if you have, the resources, that is, because you don't have so much business to lose yet. And I also think it becomes more difficult again once a company has reached a certain size, because then the offices are all around the world.
Yeah.
There is different tech stacks from on different sides of your website, all this kind of stuff. And if you want to have changed something, you really have to know how to play the company politics.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, so that really can take ages, and you might even not be involved in the daily discussions around that. So, once you have a big company and a big business, it it can get much more difficult again. I think starting SEO is fairly easy. You have a lot of room to just try out stuff. You can even, like, I'm my personal philosophy of SEO in 2023 is not to focus on link building when you're an established company, because I think you have too much to lose. And by link building, I don't mean, PR and stuff like that. That's totally legitimate. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are investing into links because you want to grow the traffic by 10% or whatever your hypothesis is, um, and on the downside, if you're getting caught, you are losing 30%. Well, for me, that's not worth the hassle anymore. But if you
Yeah.
are a starting company, well, you don't have any traffic, you have not so much to lose, so the tactic can be totally legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Starting SEO, I think, is easy. Then the first website uh, relaunch can be very, very challenging. Then there comes like this. Once you're through the relaunch, this you're happy about, everything works again, and you can really do SEO, and it might also be, you can implement stuff fast because you got rid of all the legacy. And then at some point when you reach uh, a certain size again, it becomes difficult again, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing you mentioned right there regarding link building. Um, because in the early days, as we mentioned, it was pretty much dominated by link building activities.
Mm-hmm.
And these days, a number of brands purposefully stay away from actively link building because um, I consider it the most not necessarily difficult. The most difficult isn't the right word. It's the most um, dangerous is probably a better word to use. The most dangerous aspect of SEO, because as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
you could, with the example you gave, you could see a 10% increase. You could also see a 30% decrease. However, there are some industries, namely gambling or online
Mm-hmm.
gaming, that would say our industry is all about links. If you're not link building, you're going to be crushed. And there is no two ways about it. Do you think those industries have a point around link building, or is it a case of across the board, across all verticals, link building should be handled with care?
Um, so as I mentioned in the beginning, my start in this career was actually affiliation, an affiliate business to sports betting.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think these guys are fairly good at building links, and they have a lot of experience accumulated in this industry. So I wouldn't condemn it, and I also would say that I'm fairly good at it still. But mm, I think one of the great one of the things that you always should be avoiding when you're an SEO is to be too dogmatic. And we all know what Google is communicating, and they say, hey, don't build links, and they kind of make a global statement out of it. But I think one of the finest things as an SEO that you can do is to really study your industry. And if your industry is having success with a certain technique, it might go against what Google is stating, and they always make it kind of a global statement, but it's just not true in your industry. Like
Yeah, exactly.
the empirics are there. So
Hmm.
um, I do think you have to adapt, but it also goes the other way. I think way too many SEOs have kind of their checklists where they say you have to do these 30 things, and it's like they're all equally weighted, they're all equally important, and then you dive into the industry and you realize that none of your competition is doing that, but they're still ranking,
Hmm.
very well. So why should you be doing all of this stuff at the same time? So
Hmm.
I don't believe in indefinite and global statements in SEO. I think you have to study your industry, and then to see what works in your industry and what doesn't work, and then adapt your plan of action accordingly. What I
Yeah.
would say though is, and this is it's not a global statement, but it's close to, the bigger you are in terms of traffic, in terms of SEO traffic, the more careful I think you should be with link building, because the risk reward ratio, in my humble opinion, is not very rewarding. You can gain, but you can also lose a lot. And
Yeah.
if you're driving a lot of revenue, gambling with it might not be worth the effort.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that SEOs who are aggressive with their link building tends to be either within the gaming industry and or
Hmm.
they work on small sites. So they can afford to be aggressive with their link building. But yes, for big, large sites, not necessarily the best thing to do. Too risky. Like I said, it's the most dangerous area of SEO. So trading carefully is wise
And
maneuver.
as an addition, why I think this is still something in the gambling industry, because just as you said, the gambling industry still consists of a lot of small websites. These websites are ran by big companies, but they're actually putting a lot of eggs out there, and they don't put everything into one basket. So
Hmm.
if you have even the average life expectancy of a gambling website of 10, 11 months or so before it gets busted, and it kind of gets not removed, but it loses all the traffic from Google, you still have a lot of money to earn. And if you have enough X out, you can do that again and again. It's just an inherent part of the business. So that's also why it works. But if you are trying to build a big brand and you have one website, uh, well, don't gamble with that, because that's the only thing you have, right?
Yeah, not a good idea. Let's finish off on skill sets. SEO within the industry. I think you alluded to it earlier. There is a big push around hard skills. A lot of the recommendations, a lot of the articles online are focused on hard skills. Would you say soft skills within, let's say, senior SEO to head of SEO level become more important than hard skills?
Yes, to a certain degree, I do believe so. On the one hand, I think in order to become, or in order to be legit in your SEO, in your senior role, mm, it is important that you have been uh, going through all of the junior as well, so that you actually do know what you're talking about. But at some point when you're so senior that you have different team members, you are hiring your team members because you believe they are able to do something better than you. So if you are not trusting the one that you have hired or that you contributed to hire, well, maybe the hiring process was the wrong one. So when I manage, I always manage under the premise that I want to be managing people that are doing stuff better than me. My job then is to communicate it in a way to the top management that the top management understands that and allocates the resources to the team so that they can keep doing what they do. And there I do think that soft skills become at some point more important than actually, the hard skills, like, I don't know, pulling some kind of regex function. It doesn't play such a big role anymore when you are in a senior management position.
No, not at all. Now, speaking of that senior management business leadership position, what is the level of awareness that non-SEOs within business leadership need to have about SEO that makes them comfortable with making decisions around SEO or with an SEO, yet not being an SEO person themselves?
I think most importantly, and that might differ from company to company, but most importantly, what other senior managers need to know is when to involve SEO at the right point of time, so that it isn't late. It isn't too late when the SEO team finally gets involved. So I do think they need to understand that SEOs are very keen to understand what the tech team, for example, is doing, and even though they are not coders, they want to know like the general way that the tech team is doing that. I also think they should be knowing about some kind of PR campaign, for example. And then when we come to top like top level, like CEO, of course, the CEO should know enough about SEO in order to see the business value of it, and in order to increase or in order to allocate sufficient amount of financial resource into the team. And I think that depends a little bit on the overall goal of a company. If it's like a growth companies and they really want to get, a traffic volume, but they're not looking to monetize the traffic volume to a very high degree. It's really about growth. I think, high level stats like, well, traffic growth are really, really important to to communicate. It's also really important to communicate where the traffic growth comes from. Is it like certain portfolios of content that you're writing about, or is it a relaunch? Did you recently relaunch some kind of templated pages, stuff like that? A CEO should know. If it's a company that is seeking profitability, well, we are talking about the cost that goes into the team and the revenue that goes out of the team. And there you come also very easily into company politics, because then we are talking attribution, and as everyone knows, that's not always super easy.
In order to avoid negatively impacting the business or a business, I should say, by way of worse off SEO performance, what should the CEO be asking their SEOs?
What should the CEO be asking the SEOs? That's not a question per se, but I think a CEO should always be very concerned about that there is no silos in a company. So a CEO should be constantly thinking of ways how the expertise in each respective team is actually um, communicated in a way that it also reaches the other departments, because if there is no communication between the departments, that's where the mistakes are happening.
Hmm.
So I really think that for a CEO of a digital company, it's super important to make sure that information runs freely across the company.
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. Till, thank you so much for your time. You've dropped amazing gems today. Where can people find you online?
Well, if they want to see what I'm up to privately, that would be um, under my Instagram handle, Imbis Branco. I don't know if you're going to when you post this stuff. I can give you my
Absolutely.
name
I'll have
because
it.
it's hard to spell.
Yes,
And if
yes, please
not
go ahead.
professionally, perfectly. If not professionally, I would be super happy to connect on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn and Instagram. I'll have those links in the description for you. What are you looking
Perfect.
forward to this year, either personal or business?
Well, personally, I'm looking forward to. I also have some smaller projects that I'm spending some time on right now, together with a friend to see where it goes. Personally, also, I'm a professional. I'm a dedicated sailor as well, so I want to
Ah,
go sailing this year. And then I'm also quite interested to see, and I have no informed opinion about this at all, so I don't know where it's going. But with the rise of ChatGPT and these kind of tools, I want to see what it does to the SEO industry. And although I don't know what it's going to do, I'm pretty sure it's going to do something with it. And that's always something that I love when the industry is getting exciting.
mm. Yeah, I think the next 1 to 3 years is going to be a pivotal year and a disruptive year, but disruptive in a good way.
Yeah,
It's gonna be exciting.
if I have one guess, but again, it's really from a uninformed standpoint right now. But I do believe that we are going to see, now that the margin cost of producing written content is going to fall drastically, and that's just what is very likely to happen. I do think that in order to be ahead of the competition, I do believe we are going to see a lot more video content, visual content. So it's going to be a mix of content that I think we are going to see in the future, also in the SERPs. And that excites me a lot, because lately I have been doing some YouTube stuff as well. So
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, it's exciting times ahead, and again, it's going to become more and more complex as an SEO industry. And I, for one, am looking forward to it. Till,
yeah, me
thank you
too.
so much for your time. Have a brilliant day, and we'll catch up again another
Mhm.
time.
Thanks a lot, Austin. Thanks for having me, and have a very nice afternoon.
Cheers, pleasure. Cheers. Bye now.